Good morning to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club, where I will be extending the sub-series that I'm working on, a sub-series entitled All That I've Learned from Tony Robbins Over the Years, and continue the tribute to the big man, and to see if one day I can get to my goal of delivering 365 videos, one a day, of all the material that I've been able to enjoy over the years. For those who are wondering where I am this morning, I'm at Fingal Bay up here in the Port Stephens area. It's overcast, so we're not going to enjoy a magnificent sunrise, but hopefully we'll get something of interest to kick off this special day. What I'll do today is I'll go for a walk and talk, and hopefully go over there to the sand spit that's been missing since the beginning of COVID. There were some big storms back there in 2020 which washed away the spit, and I have heard from a local that the spit is now back. There's been a few other storms that have happened over the years that have pushed back the sand to where it was. So we'll go for a walk and talk and see where it leads us. Because yesterday we talked about one of the key themes of UPW, one of the things that Tony Robbins harps upon with great passion. And that is, in order to live an extraordinary life, one needs to have extraordinary and high standards that they set for themselves. Because a good life won't come automatically. And the reason why it won't come automatically is that there are so many distractions in the world. There are so many things happening that are distracting us from achieving the highest level, the greatest outcome in our lives. And we need to fight. We need to swim against the tide sometimes. We need to walk through the sands of easiness. And I mentioned, and Tony Robbins mentions, that his mentor, Jim Rohn, says something really profound, that it's easy, really, really easy to be successful and to achieve a lot of things in your life, to be a high achiever. But by the same token, he says, it's even easier to be a low achiever. So that's something that we need to think about quite deeply, because it is very, very profound. It's a very profound statement, that the only difference between a high achiever and a low achiever is that the high achiever chooses to take the road less travelled, chooses to set a higher standard, and to allow their OCD to keep them honest, whereas a low achiever will always find an excuse as to why they shouldn't, couldn't, wouldn't have done the things that they need to do in order to achieve that extraordinary life that they deserve. Anthony Robbins talks about the importance of writing things down, of having a journal, of being deliberate in the things you do and the life that you want to live. Because unless you write something down, unless you commit to something, then chances are it's not going to happen. And the reason why it's not going to happen, as we know, is that we get distracted and we move on to something else. Because every road, every path has a hump in it. Every road, every path has multiple, not single but multiple barriers. It's got potholes. It has sand. It's got, you name it, broken glass along the way. And we need to be able to traverse and to get through those distractions. Because whilst they appear to be big and hard to get through and over, the reality is, if you focus just for a moment, if you maintain a certain level of momentum, then you can get over, under and through any of those barriers that appear in your path. The other golden rule that Anthony Robbins lives by is the fact that when you get to a junction, a decision point in any road, when you come up against any hump in the road, once you get over that hump, then the road gets a little easier. And a very, very powerful point, let me just get out of the way of this water, a very powerful point that the big man makes is that there's less competition the further you get along the road, the further you get along the path. Because what happens is when you look back, people have given up, people have stopped, and stopped for various reasons. They've stopped because the hump in the road has pushed them back. They've rolled back once they've hit that hump in the road because they haven't had enough momentum. They haven't created enough certainty in their own mind to give them the drive and the momentum to get over that hump. And that's why it's important to be self-propelled, to be a self-starter, and not to expect others to help you get over the hump. Because what happens is that hump in the road requires a certain quality and a certain character of a person to be able to get over it. And this is where family and friends, through their nurture and comforting and support, aren't the people who are going to allow you and help you get over and through some of those big challenges that require us to change, those big challenges that require us to persevere, those big challenges that require us to change as a person, to morph into something different, bigger and better. Because friends and family love us, they feel sorry for us, they don't want us to go through pain and suffering, and hence are killjoys to a certain extent. They'll tell us, don't worry about it, you don't need to be the way you want to be, you don't need to achieve the goals that you set for yourself, take it easy, chill out, have a good life, Just enjoy yourself. You hear this all the time. Just enjoy yourself. But the real answer is, though, that Anthony Robbins tells us, the only way you can sustainably just enjoy yourself is through constant growth and development. Because it's through growth and development and contribution that people gain the sophistication of contentment and fulfillment. But the trick is that in order to grow and develop, you need to let go of the person who you once were. You need to let go and liberate yourself from your past self, and to do the hard work to build the muscle, to build the intelligence, to build the experience through trial and error, through doing and failing and doing, and learning the difference between failure and success, and applying those lessons and gathering and building a portfolio, a library of patterns where you're able to know what works, what doesn't work, and to build a pattern library. Because life, and we'll say it again and again, it's a common theme that Anthony Robbins has, and he kicks off his UPW with this very, very simple message. Life is full of patterns. Patterns that have always existed. Just like these waves crash into the shore, the tide ebb and flows, the clouds come and go, the sun rises and sun sets. So too, our life is a series of patterns, but you need to gain perspective. We need to gain a perspective in terms of how these patterns operate. And to gain this perspective, you need to stand back and you need to look from a distance. And once you see these patterns operating and reoperating, you can then use these patterns and predict trends. You can be a trend detective and look for what's happening. And the same thing happens in relationships. The same things happen in health. The same patterns and trends occur in investments. And once you understand the pattern and the trend, then you can become a friend of those patterns and then use those patterns to anticipate outcomes and to gain certainty and to understand that there is a process that once followed, once obeyed, once submitted to, will lead to consistent, predictable outcomes in one's life. But it takes patience, and it takes perseverance, and it takes trust. And for that reason, as Anthony Robbins said before, love your friends, love your relatives. You can choose your friends, but you can't choose your relatives. But your relatives are there for a purpose, and we need to respect that purpose, and we need to honour that purpose. And similarly, friends will come and go in our lives. People will come and go. But what is very, very important is to choose to carefully, deliberately select a peer group of people who are like-minded, and are people who will hold you to account and keep you honest, and be the people who help you identify the standard that you need, help you raise that standard, and help you maintain that standard. And the people that we refer to are people who need, or people who have achieved the things that you want in your life already. People who have spent their lives researching, people who have spent their lives learning and accumulating experiences and patterns. So Anthony Robbins introduces us to a thing called a life wheel, where he says in order to live an extraordinary life, you need to raise your standards in each area of your life: your health, your relationships, your career, your spiritual life. And there's a whole series of about 8 or even more. You can get even more detailed in terms of your life wheel. But we're called to have a look at our life wheel and to honestly assess where we're at, to give ourselves a rating of 0 to 10 in each of those areas of our lives, and then to identify where we are, and then to dream and to think about where we'd like to be, and then to develop a plan, to write down and develop a plan in terms of what we need to do to get to where we want to be, step by step, and then to have somebody who's going to guide us, somebody who's going to be able to help us visualize and understand what is possible based on what they've achieved and what they can see in us in terms of our skills, help us identify the gaps in the skills. And Anthony Robbins talks about athletes and people who are top of their game, people who are leaders in their field. And he basically says that in order to be the best of the best, there are a half dozen principles, there are a half dozen skills, there are a half dozen mindsets and things that one needs to consider in order to get more out of life and more out of the time that they invest in their lives. So this is where it's important to have a journal. And as we said before, life is cyclical and life goes in patterns. And the big man talks about the importance of measurement, the importance of introspection, and the importance of being deliberate and methodical and structured in one's approach. So what he's basically saying here is that you need to write down how you feel, what you're thinking about, what triggers certain reactions, because once you understand what makes you tick, or what makes other people tick who are more successful and more productive, then you can see a pattern. You can register what's going on, and then you can respond in kind. You can respond productively to what's going on, so that you can make better decisions that are going to impact and influence your life. There's nothing wrong with having a simple life, but what Tony Robbins says is that there are many people potentially who are not fulfilled with their life because there's a gap, or there are multiple gaps, and there's a cognitive dissonance happening, an unsettling cognitive dissonance that is happening in their head because they're not living their true self. They're not living their calling. They're not maximizing and leveraging their skills, their gifts. And it could be because they're still in a growth stage. It could be because they are still in a building stage where they're building their capabilities. Because before we can become selfless, the big man says that we need to be selfish up until a certain point. As young children or as young adults, we need to build our skill set, enhance our skill set, and learn the many life lessons. And in order to do that, we need to go to school, have the right coaches, have the right peers and people around us to enable us to benchmark and baseline and compare ourselves to. And we need to spend a lot of energy and a lot of effort in learning, relearning, because the art of learning is simply the adding of the unknown to the known. And the more you add, the more you've got to add to. I remember going to the Tony Robbins conference seminar that we had here in the 80s, and Tony Robbins was considered to be the father of mind mapping and the president of Mensa. He was at one stage the smartest person, the person with the highest IQ, the highest registered IQ in the world. So he was a man who had achieved the pinnacle of his career. And I remember at his seminar where he said to everybody that the human brain is so complex and so wonderful that it's considered to be the closest thing to infinity. And science have only scratched the surface in terms of mapping the brain and understanding how the brain works. And the next great frontier, the next wonder of the world, is where people are able to understand more and more in terms of how the brain operates, how memory works, and how we can access a greater portion of the brain to make better decisions and to increase our intelligence. Because one thing for sure and for certain is that each generation that comes into the world with greater gifts and varying gifts. We're not saying that today's generation are better than the previous generations, because in some ways they are, and in other ways they are not. But what we're saying is that with technology, with artificial intelligence, with the platforms that we have in terms of being able to generate and distribute information and allow people to connect with each other, we've gotten to a place now where most people in the world are connected to the internet, which is a wonderful, wonderful repository of all the knowledge that has ever been collected in the world, both good knowledge and not so good knowledge. I'm not saying that all the stuff on the internet is productive and of great benefit to all people, but as they say, like every single day, the amount of information that is deposited into the internet platform is more than what our parents would have received in their whole lifetime. So the internet is a platform that can change many, many people's lives because it facilitates discussion, it facilitates thought, it facilitates comparison, benchmarking and baselining. But as we know, it can also facilitate falsehoods, falsity. It can be the engine room for damaging conspiracy theories. But we need to take the good with the bad and to understand that the platform that it provides, that free platform that it provides, is something that is very, very powerful to us and to future generations. I can see, if my eyes aren't deceiving me, that this strip of sand, this Moses path, has reappeared now that we have low tide. And as I remember over the past 2 or 3 years, on many occasions I'd come up here at low tide and there was no way in the world that I could get from here to Shark Island because this spit had been dramatically washed away, so much so that lots of people thought that it would be a permanent wash away and that we'd never ever be able to walk to Shark Island ever again. But once again, the locals who understand patterns, who understand the cycles of nature, said that it will come back, just like it's come back time and time again over the years. It'll get washed away and it will get washed back. God has his ways, as one person said to me, and we need to believe, and as I mentioned before, we need to trust the process, because society will predict many things. Conspiracy theorists will say many things and present much evidence. But the bottom line is that in this world that we live in today, there is evidence supporting every possible view that you may have, because nature, because people are habitual in nature. If you watch yourself long enough, if you watch your children long enough, what you'll discover is that sooner or later they will do good things and they will do things which are not so good. We do everything within a cycle, within a life cycle. We make good decisions, we make bad decisions. And just like a Rubik's Cube, you know, the good things and the bad things get mixed up over life. And some people will judge us. Some people will make decisions based on one single element of who we are and what we've done, and will not take a holistic approach in terms of interpreting us and evaluating us, but will take a minimalist approach where they will just take one thing that we've said, one thing that we've done, and use that to judge who we are. And this is an important point because we know ourselves pretty well. We know what our intentions are. And Tony Robbins reminds us also that most people don't spend their whole lives thinking about us. Most people don't get up in the morning saying to themselves, who can I screw today? Who can I damage today? Who can I cause grief to today? It's not their intention. Most people get up wanting to live a simple life and just to achieve their own desires, which could be different to your interests. I remember working many years ago in a company called Advantra, and there was a business manager there of Indian background. His name was Sastry. I remember his first name, Sastry, and he told me that at the end of the day, we all have different interests, differing interests at different times of our lives. You know, and Tony Robbins reaffirms this, where he says that people are at different seasons, different stages, different phases of their lives, and we need to meet people where they're at. And this is the mistake that most people make, in that they try and meet people where they are at themselves rather than to be empathetic and loving and caring and sensitive to other people's issues and other people's challenges. So I'm just walking across this spit now, and as you can see, wherever I look, there's water, sand and water again here in Fingal Bay. Just talking with you today, that person who drowned at Stockton Beach on Sunday has yet to be found. It's been a couple of days now, but what will slowly happen with time is the body will be pushed, I guess, with the currents up or down the coast. I'm not quite sure. I saw the helicopter yesterday hovering around here, and what I'll try and do is I'll just go to the other side and come back before the high tide starts to build and this spit disappears again, because it is quite dangerous. People drown here all the time. A mate of mine who's a local was saying that sometimes here, when the water's crossing over, the sand becomes like quicksand, and you don't want to be caught in it because that can be quite dangerous. So I'll just take 15 minutes to go to the other side here and then head back. Hopefully I'll keep an eye on the spit here so that it doesn't get washed away or covered over, should I say, with water. But you can see here that there is a lot of sand. There is a lot of sand on the spit now, and it hasn't been as good as this for at least a decade, I'd say. But it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And as you can see over there, there's Mount Tomaree, where the lookout is, and I love going up there and doing vlogs, and it's just beautiful. I just love it. Hopefully this weather will hold out, and I'll just walk to the end of the beach and walk back, and we'll continue just chatting away. So my friend Sastry reminded me that people aren't necessarily evil. Some people are, and that's why our jails are full of people. But the reason why some people are more evil than others is that some people are more focused on their own selfish interests rather than being selfless and looking to live a life which is more humble, where they can share their gifts with everybody around them. Rather, they prefer to live a monopoly where all the good things that they're able to accumulate they keep for themselves, or maybe just keep for their family, but they don't share with the wider community. And as Christians, our calling as Christians are to do two basic things: to love, worship and serve God with all our heart, mind and soul, to do the things that are God pleasing, and to love our neighbour as we love ourselves, noting that we need to love ourselves in order to love our neighbour. Otherwise, if there is no love for ourselves, then chances are we're not going to be in a position to be able to love anybody else, because we need to have a bank account that is full of love to start off with, and we need to keep on investing and making meaningful deposits into those accounts, and to be partnering with God to help make this world a better place so that we benefit, but at the same time, through our benefit, other people benefit as well. So I'm almost at the end of the beach here on a place called Shark Island, and I recall back in 2018 or 2019 going to the other end of Shark Island, where there's a lighthouse, and seeing, it was during winter, and seeing whales just about 200 metres offshore, close enough to touch them, close enough to hear them, and they were just exploding, breaching the surface and exploding into the air and come crashing down on the water, making a spectacular spectacle. For me, who was a solo audience for them, nobody else was there, but I do remember it, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful opportunity. So it's a nice peaceful end of the beach here. As you can see, there's hardly any breeze, and it's a beautiful morning. It's Tuesday morning, and we've gone for a lovely walk where we've had a shared experience, and I've given you an opportunity to be with me so we can be with each other on this magical morning and see, experience the wonders of the mid-north coast here in New South Wales, a place that I've always loved and a place that is popular to many people. How idyllic is it over here? As I say, I need to keep an eye on the spit to make sure that the water doesn't go over. So I'll just head to the end here just to show you where the path is that you can take to take you to the other side. But and finish off what I was saying here. Let me just have a look at my notes quickly to see if there's anything else. I think I've lost my place. But once again, the key message from today and the key message from the whole seminar from Anthony Robbins is to lift our standards and to try and be with people who are going to lift our standards. And that's always hard. And that's why sometimes when you're working in a corporation, you have managers, you have bosses that are taskmasters, because their job as a taskmaster is to help you raise your standard. They're there to raise the corporate standard. They're there to maintain the standard and not to let things slacken off. And we're not saying that people tend to slacken off all the time, because if you allow people the opportunity to do their job, most people will do a great job. But the reality is with time, people, even in their roles, get distracted. And these distractions change people's priorities. And sometimes people are forced to major on minors. Another point that Anthony Robbins says. So this is where, as we say, we need people to help us maintain a higher standard. And that's why we need coaches. That's why in martial arts we have senseis, because they push people, they cajole people, they force people to do what they wouldn't normally do themselves, to scream, to push their bodies, their minds, their physicality to its limits. Just bear with me. I'm just over here, and I remember, it's funny to say this, but I remember years ago I was over here, and on my way across I came across a massive seashell. And it was back in a time when my granddaughter was 1 year old and too young to appreciate it. And what I said to myself is, what I naively said to myself, is that I will bring it over here and bury it somewhere near a rock. Could be that rock over there, just to the side of the rock. And one day I would come back over here with my granddaughter Annabelle. But now I'm happily proud to say that I've got 3 granddaughters. I've got Annabelle, Elizabeth, and Panayota, Poppy. And I said I'd come back over here and I'd pretend to discover that shell so I could have some fun with Annabelle. But now that I look around, after 5 years, I can't quite see where that rock is, and I can see a lot more sand over here than what I ever remember before. So the shifting sands, the changes in the environment, which are just normal. You know, people talk of climate change, but for those of us who have lived long enough will realise that everything is constantly changing, some for the better, some for the worse, and to try and think that we know what causes these changes other than God's will is a little bit folly. To think that humans can have an impact on God's creation, so much so that we're destroying it. Just while I've got you here, I've got a dolphin out here. I'll just focus a little bit closer if I can, hoping that he comes up. There we go. So we've got a dolphin, and I've been quite lucky up here recently. The past week that I've been here, everywhere I've been able to see a dolphin, and I just love it. It's just beautiful to be able to be one with God's creation, one with nature. And as I say, you just spend enough time in the same place, you'll see the beauty in everything that we have around us. Anyway, I can't see him now, so I'll just go back to what I was watching before. But Mount Tomaree over there is beautiful, and it is a very calm day. Yeah, the dolphins are heading back this way, so they're probably feeding or following some fish. So I'll just focus on it a little bit longer, just to get another view. There we are. They're just taking a deep dive there, so maybe going down to collect some fish. But how peaceful is it? The crashing of the waves, the anticipation of crossing the spit for the first time in a long time is just so special. And I can't wait to do it with the rest of my family and friends, and to encourage others to come up here and make the most of it while they can, because as we say, these things come and go, and unless you do it when it's here, then sometimes we miss the opportunity and it just dissipates and disappears forever, just like that magnificent shell that I'd found for my granddaughter Annabelle. I can no longer see where it is, but I guess with time, with the movement of the sand again, it may reveal itself to somebody else over the next number of years. Who knows how long it will be. So I think I'll leave it there. So thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Jim's 5am Club, where we added another video, another episode to the sub-series, the tribute series that I'm putting together for the big man Tony Robbins, where we talk about all the things that we've learnt over the years and documented them and talked about them, contemporized them by adding another spin, adding my experiences to it, so that we can all benefit. And as I say, once we do it, once we lock it away, then it's there forever and a day. So those dolphins are just over there, just off that little point. How beautiful is it with the backdrop there of Mount Tomaree. I was up there a couple of weeks ago and I saw this massive shark swimming up the beach on Zenith Beach, just beyond the breakers. First time ever that I've seen a shark up here. So I think I'll leave it there, guys, and we'll chat again later. So thank you very much, and I look forward to coming to you again from a different place with a different message of empowerment, where we examine and we talk about in detail, great detail in fact, all the things that we've learnt from Tony Robbins. And I think today's series is number 62 or 63. So I'm making good progress. I'm making really good progress. Still a long way to go to get to 365 videos. I'm almost 20% of my way. But I know myself, if I say I'm going to do something, if I have the health, I will definitely generate the material, because I am probably the world's most prolific producer of personal development material, with a YouTube channel that boasts over 1,600 videos, with many hours of videos. And as I say to my children, if you just watch one video a day, or if you watch one video a week, I think I was saying to them, it would take over 30 years to get through my library of material. It would take you more than a generation to get through all the things that I've talked about in terms of personal development. And my mission during COVID was to do something productive. And I thought that every person has an interesting life. Every person has a profound life in some ways, and the knowledge and the wisdom that one accumulates during their lifetime through their interaction with their parents, their culture, their religion, their workmates, their schools, has an impact on their life. And those lessons, those valuable lessons, need to be documented, need to be maintained, need to be kept for future generations. Because as the big man tells us, as the scriptures tell us as well, there is nothing new on the planet. There is nothing new. Nothing much has changed. There's nothing new at all. It's just new to us. All of the problems that we'll ever face, all of the challenges, all of the things that'll trouble us, all the things that'll make us happy, are just common and have just happened over and over and over again. And during a lifetime, most people will get to experience both many joys and many sorrows. And the key message from Tony Robbins is that we need to take those sorrows and those joys and to make the most of them, to learn from them, because life doesn't happen to you, life happens for you. So it's our duty, it's our honour to make the most of our lives and to take everything that is happening and to think about it in a productive way, not to think about it in a negative way, not to think about it in a cunning way, but to think about it in a productive, useful way. I can see the water starting to cross over the spit, so I better hightail it over there, otherwise I'm going to get a little bit wet. And hereby is an important lesson to all people, that opportunity doesn't last forever. You need to make the most of it while the time is right, because just like this spit is disappearing in front of our very eyes and potentially creating danger for those who don't see the danger, it's important to act, and to act boldly. And Tony Robbins is the master of telling people that we need to take bold action, but we also need to be deliberate in what we do. So what I'll do now is I'll need to time my run so that I don't get wet. But I dare say that in the next 10-15 minutes, this spit, which was dry and an obvious path, will get covered in water from both sides, and it will become virtually impossible to cross without getting wet. I'm not saying that there is any danger at this point in time, but what I'm saying is that we need to time our run to get across. Here we go. Let me just jog across and just zigzag the water, and we'll see how we go. And we've made it. Whoa, there we go. And we've got a lovely little sunrise to finish it off and to celebrate it. I'm actually quite surprised at how quickly that water's come over. And that's why, over the years, this spit has been both a blessing and a curse, because it invites people it invites people to tempt their fate. But at the same time, if you're not a strong swimmer, if you panic, and if you are slack in your observation and don't realise the dangers, then you can get caught up and it can get tricky. Anyway, thank you. I've enjoyed having a chat. Looks like there's some rain coming. So I'll head back to the car and we'll chat again later. Take care, everybody. Bye for now. And with love from Jim at the Spit here at Fingal Bay, the Spit that unites the mainland to Shark Island. Take care, Yassas, and bye for now.